In the Sport Week of the Washington Star, printed in Washington, D.C. on August 16, 1970, quote, "Three of Bruce Lee's pupils, Joe Louis, Chuck Norris, and Mike Stone, have between them won every major karate tournament in the United States. Joe Louis was Grand National Champion 3 successive years. Bruce Lee handles and instructs these guys almost as a parent would a young child, which can be somewhat disconcerting to watch. It's like walking into a saloon in the Old West and seeing the fastest guy in the territory standing there with notches all over his gun. Then in walks a pleasant little fellow who said, 'How many times do I have to tell you? You are doing it all wrong.' And the other guy listens intently." Unquote.
Later in 1968, early 68, I was doing a nightclub act with myself, Bob Wall. Bob Wall was the co-star of that film, Enter the Dragon, and Mike Stone. We were kind of like buddies at that time. As a matter of fact, Bob and I were living together. We were business partners. At the end of each nightclub act, Mike Stone and I would do a little demonstration karate match. And then I noticed his style had changed. And he started telling me he was working out with this Chinese guy named Bruce Lee. And he said, Bruce Lee wants to work with you. You should go down and start taking lessons with him, private lessons with him. So eventually I took his advice, and Bruce Lee and I got in contact with each other. And once a week I would go there and take a private with Bruce and spend the whole rest of the week working on what he would show me. And it actually, in a great way, improved my fighting style.
All type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, they're coming in to, and ask me to teach them not so much of how to defend themselves or how to do somebody in. Rather, they want to learn to express themselves through some movement, be it anger, be it determination, or whatsoever. So in other words, what I'm saying, therefore, is that he is paying me to show him in combative form the art of expressing the human body.
But Jeet Kune Do, as he said, I have not invented a new style or a method of training, whether it be Chinese, Japanese, Okinawan, Korean, or whatever. He says, these are just a way so I can learn about life and about combat in general, because life is combat, as he used to say.
Like some people say to me, well, Bruce Lee didn't fight in tournaments because he couldn't use his technique. No, that's not true. Bruce Lee would have made the adjustment to fight in point karate championship. If he wanted to, he could make the adjustment. You know, a couple of people were his students who were point karate champions. They studied with Bruce Lee, but when they came to the point karate tournaments, they made the adjustment. You know, you can make that adjustment to according to what you're doing, and Bruce would have done the same thing. I don't know if I told you that, but Bruce was, I don't think you asked me, but I will tell you that, speaking of Bruce Lee, guy, it was absolutely unbelievable. You know, so many people don't know how great he was. I mean, people always ask me, come up here to say, Jim, how great is Bruce Lee? I say, you don't really know. And a lot of people won't tell you how great he was. I will tell you. In my personal opinion, Bruce Lee was a step above everybody. I mean, everybody. During that era, even today, I mean, it holds up today, but during that era, the 60s and 70s, Bruce was just great. And in my opinion, he was just a step above, no matter how great everybody else was, Bruce was, boom, just a little step above. He was just absolutely unbelievable. I'm talking about sparring. I'm not talking about just working techniques. I'm talking about when it came to sparring, Bruce was unbelievable. Unbelievable. People don't know. They don't. He's like the Michael Jordan, beyond Michael Jordan.
He didn't necessarily enter tournaments because he didn't like the fact that it was one-on-one, and he called it a touch and run game. They go like this, and then somebody goes point, but nobody did anything. He liked to put on gloves and hit you. And he liked to be hit. That was the difference. And he said, if you hit me, then we'll give you a point. If I hit you, we get a point. So he liked his gloves, he liked to make contact, and he didn't like the point and run. And that's one of the reasons he didn't want to enter tournaments. He watched.
Bruce Lee kind of got me back into the full contact stuff because we studied a lot of old boxing films like Willie Pep, who a lot of Italians feel is pound for pound best fighter of all time, and some people feel Sugar Ray Robinson is. We'd watch Willie Pep's footwork. We would watch the explosiveness of some of Jack Dempsey's fight films. We watched the stationary positioning of the great Joe Louis when he got on the inside, like in the pocket. We'd watch the distancing and mobility tactics of a Muhammad Ali, and it kind of got me interested in the full contact as opposed to the stationary kind of you hit me, I hit you back, your turn, my turn type fighting. So I got tired and I got kind of really disgusted with what they call point fighting, and so I decided I'm going to go in and create a new sport and just call it full contact or something. So around 1969, I started really drifting out of the point fighting tournament scene. I think 68 was my best year. I won 11 consecutive grand championships without a loss, and I think that's still a record to this day.
Or just worked out with him for quite a while.
And I studied with him because the guy had, I studied with him for a whole year in a class situation.
Oh, in L.A.?
No, in Oakland.
Oh, with
James Lee.
George Lee and all those.
Yeah, all those guys. And I was in that class. There was about 10 of us. And it was different because he would lecture most of the time, and then he would just do like, he said, bridging the gap. And at that time, I didn't, he was so intellectual about things that he had a label for everything. And then, like when he did the 5 ways of attacking somebody, he would say A, B, C, and blah, 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 So anyway, we spent whole weeks and weeks on he just come in and close the gap. And never really sit down and explain to what it was, but afterward he gave you a lecture. And then years later I realized, well, wait a minute, that's what it is, all mental stuff, because why he closed the gap on you and you slow in your reflexes is because he can read you before you even start.
I heard his closing speed was phenomenal.
Oh, man. But he had us stand there like this, and he'd come down the line, 10 to 12 of us, and he'll say, okay, now you try to block. Boom, he's in there, and, he's in and out. Or either, you're just a little bit too late or too soon.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Must have been something to have trained with him.
Oh, yeah, and then I sparred with him over here in Culver City, I think, when they were living over there. And God, it was nothing. I said, no, hit me with that sidekick. I said, he said, oh, okay, man, I saw it. And I just kind of tapped. He did it half speed, and I caught it a little bit, But then he wanted me to come in and attack him. Well, he wasn't there.
Really?
Because he ran miles and miles backwards and sideways.
That was part of his running? He used to do that?
Yeah, run backwards and sideways, And that's how, for footwork. Because he studied Muhammad Ali, and he says, the secret of it is the footwork. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And he told me, he said, 2 things remember if you want to be a good fighter. He said, stay alive and stay alert. See, he all philosophizing was almost the conceptual stuff. And unless you're really in tune with it, you really don't know what he's talking about, and you're going to continue to, as he says, patternize training.
Right, yeah.
He said, everybody, he said, man, it don't make sense. He said, he used to sit there and talk, in his accent,
Yeah.
And he says, you get a fat guy, a skinny guy, a little guy, and you're going to teach him to do the same way? So it's like a bunch of tin soldiers,
Yeah.
And so he said, you're perfecting, just a patternized mess, or he called it classical mess.
To me, it seemed like his system was evolving real fast then, and it was hard to be left behind.
By the month. He was constantly changing. Almost every month the curriculum would change. When I first started, I learned forms. And about 1.5 months later on, he told me forms are out. He taught me this is started at the halfway. That's when I know halfway on a praying mantis form, halfway, all the way on the first form of Selim Tau. So he had me doing forms, and then just threw it out and said, forget that. That's not where it's at. So he says we're going to do drills that are closely simulate combat. And I think this is it. We're going to hit the heavy bag. We're going to work the top and bottom bag. We're going to work the speed bag. And we're going to work the focus club, which at that time nobody was using the focus clubs.
You see, actually, I do not teach, karate because I do not believe in styles anymore. I mean, I do not believe that there is such thing as like Chinese way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting or whatever way of fighting, because unless human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs, we will have a different form of fighting. But basically, we have only 2 hands and 2 feet. So styles tends to not only separate man, because they have their own doctrines, and then the doctrine became the gospel truth, that you cannot change, But if you do not have styles, if you just say, well, here I am, as a human being, how can I express myself totally and completely? Now, that way, you won't create a style, because style is a crystallization, I mean, that way, it's a process of continuing growth.
You talk about Chinese boxing. How does it differ from, say, our kind of boxing?
Well, first, we use the feet. And then we use the elbow. And
use the thumbs.
You name it, man. We
use it all.
You have to, see, because, I mean, that is the expression of the human body. I mean, everything. I mean, not just the hand. And when you're talking about combat, well, I mean, if it is a sport, now you're talking about something else. You have regulations, you have rules. But when you're talking about fighting as it is, with no rules,
real fighting,
well, then, baby, you better train every part of your body.
Can you give us any idea of his workout routines, how he trained?
Well, it was very hard. I mean, he did all kinds of things. He was not, again, traditional in a lot of ways that martial artist people train. He would do things very contemporary as far as utilizing weights or even electronic devices to improve the quality of his skills or muscle tone or anything else like that. But his training was very, very hard. And he would train both complementing the traditional movements and things also with very contemporary equipment in working out.
Did he train a lot of full contact? Or?
Well, they did some of that in their training, where they would put on headgear and pads and stuff, boxing gloves and stuff to train, which was good because it gave it a much more realistic approach to the sparring sessions, rather than, again, what we know of in controlled karate, where there is somewhat of a hesitation to hit.
Yes, right. We bought 6 pairs for our group. This is one of the original 6 pairs that we have. And I don't think Nozawa makes this anymore. They would make it like a shinai, but it was like a baton. It's for police training. And this was the glove. And what we used to do, we bought about 6 pairs. And what we did was cut sometimes a knuckle here. And then we formed it. As this one, we kept it the same. But we cut it here. And sometimes we get a shoe man to sew it up.
So your fingers like
right. And so he wanted the ability to, because sometimes a boxing glove, it makes it very hard to grapple. As this over here, you can still grab and you can still punch when you come across here like this game. James Lee said 100 years ahead of his time. I think definitely he was 50 years ahead of his time. What he was doing, he advocated the groundwork when nobody was doing it until the Gracies came in.
Do you ever recall him doing much in weight training when he was doing that?
Yeah, he's doing a lot of heavy, a lot of high repetition.
Was he?
Yeah.
What sort of exercises did he do?
He would do 12 squats, and then he would do presses, and then he'd do good mornings like that. That's how he wrecked his back. He would put 95 pounds and did good morning, and it popped a disc in his back or something. That's why he's laid up for it.
Because he was doing that at a time when most fighters, particularly boxers and martial artists, thought weight training would slow you down.
Yeah. No. He did 25 reps in 3 or 4 sets.
Really? Yeah.
He'd burn you up. I mean, you're familiar with weight training. And then and he would break it up. He was very organized. He break up. He said, say maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know what day it is, but he'd do glove practice. He'd hang a glove up there, and he'd go on and do that. And another time he'd do thousand punches on that bean bag. He put on the wall.
Yeah.
That's why he had his right knuckles is like that. These two knuckles, sticking up. And then he would do, BB shots and with a glove on, so he wouldn't mess up his fingers.
Just to strengthen up.
Yeah, he put the gloves on. He just, bam, I mean, he's doing thousands of repetitions.
Well, Wally J was telling me too. He saw Bruce put that 300-pound bag almost up to the ceiling.
Oh yeah. I don't dare to hold that side kick. Hold anything for that side kick.
Yeah, Hayward Nishioka told me that Bruce had the hardest side kick he ever experienced.
Yeah. I'm glad to share that because I have not, done much. A lot of people have taken advantage of Bruce. Mm-hmm. Even people don't know him, but I have never taken advantage of that.
But you'd also have very valuable insight because you're one of the few people from Oakland. And that was a very developmental period.
Yeah, because I remember there was 10 guys there, and one guy there was training with Jimmy, and suddenly he realized, he said, what kind of training you did? I said, no, I just had Western boxing. See, because at the time, the Bai Chong was like that.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon, Jeet Kune Do was like that. See, and here I started out at first, it was like that, and then I said, well, okay, I'll do it this way. Yeah.
So Bruce loved boxing.
Oh, he loved boxing. Yeah. When I was over there, and he was looking at Muhammad Ali with a mirror backwards, so he would be a southpaw.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He had every Muhammad Ali Super 8 film, 8mm Super 8 that was available.
No kidding.
He had a file drawer, and he pulled it out, and because I was collecting them too, but he had more than I had.
Really? He was also a Dempsey fan too, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. He was all those guys. Yeah, because Dempsey, Bob and Weave, and he would watch all the different styles, and then he would pick out things that. So that's why he was so advanced.
Really analytical.
Yeah, analytical. That's why he was so advanced. He was a step ahead of everybody.
Most martial artists don't like to run. They like to train, but running is something they don't necessarily like to, as they say, waste their time doing. They'd rather be kicking and punching. Bruce liked to run. I like to run. And someone asked me, they said, well, Pat, why is it that you like to run? And Chuck was there and Bruce and I said, running is the one thing that really keeps me the most fit of all of the other exercises that I do. And I like the endurance. I like to be able to go 15 rounds. I like to stay in shape, all of these wonderful things. And so I think Chuck turned to Bruce and says, well, Bruce, why do you like to run? And Bruce says, you never know when you're going to have to catch somebody to beat them up.
This is where the path that he led me on, because when we were training, we always research and experience with different things we came in contact with from different types of way Western boxing trainers would teach. He researched Silat, which very few people at that time period even were into. He researched Thai boxing. He researched Savat. He researched different grappling methods, known and unknown methods. He bought every book he can find in martial art, and he put I won't say the style, but he took the basic essence of what he called martial arts from that particular system and incorporated it into his own personal fighting system, which he called Jeet Kune Do.
I'll tell you about Bruce. Everyone wants to know. After he shot one movie, he used this electric muscle device. Isometrics it works. And I remember one time, it was Bolo it was. Bolo Young, remember? He went to Bruce's down in Kowloon Tong. Bruce had a training room, didn't he? Well, Bolo had one look in there and panicked. His whole Bruce had all these wires connected from his head to his toes, and he was pumping up.
Well, Bolo panicked. He couldn't take it. It's just like Michael Hoy in The Private Eyes. Remember when he had the thing on his head? It was madness.
And how about on judo? Were you able to share any judo with him to help enhance his training?
Judo, because he took judo from a guy named Chris Kato, who was a instructor up in Seattle. And that's why he knew all of the techniques of judo. He knew what an osotogari was. He knew what an ippon seonage was. He would name them. And he was quite good at the entries.
He knocked me not out, but sort of dazed out on my 28th birthday. It was really funny. He says, "Come on, let's spar." And I go, "Sure." And he just, usually he plays them, but this one he just sort of went after me and just knocked the bread basket. And I was lying on the ground like this, and he was just laughing. Why is he laughing? And he goes, "Wait, bring out the birthday cake." And they brought out this birthday cake, and he saying to me, "Happy birthday." He says, "That's good, because I want to knock you out on your 28th birthday or 29th birthday." So he just thought that was really funny.
Was that actual free sparring?
Free sparring, yes. He liked that. Like I said, I was not in this class.
I only saw him spar one time down at Chinatown School. He did Shotokan in street clothes against Herb Jackson. Herb was trying to use Jeet Kune Do. That was funny as hell. I love to have that on tape.
Oh yeah, he liked that. He liked to imitate Shotokan.
Yeah.
And score with it. Shotokan did was timing, not necessarily the structure.
Bruce had such a great respect for Chuck because Chuck was, first of all, a legitimate world and international karate champion. Those were titles that Bruce never won, but Bruce was a fabulous, great martial artist. He could have been a champion if that's what he wanted to do. All of his energy went into a different direction.
He didn't have to go the competitive route. Bruce was already a star, and he didn't have to become a fighter to develop that thing. I did. I had to become a fighter to develop the recognition that I got. Bruce didn't have to go that route. But I think if Bruce had, he would have done extremely well in the fighting realm.
Bruce worked closely with Bob and with Chuck. And it's interesting, several years later, I happened to be in Manila. And I was in a little bar, I had a girl on each side, and looked across the bar, and there was Chuck and a little girl on each side. And I said, "Hey, Chuck," so we ended up having dinner together. And I asked him, I said, "If you and Bruce were in a real fight to the death, who would win?" And he said, without thinking, he said, "Bruce, of course. Nobody could beat him."
Yeah. See, my last karate tournament was 1965. I'm going to tell you a story that I thought was so funny. I came back and I had a Charlie horse on the right side and a Charlie horse on the left side, and I had my ribs. I got a second place in 1965. It was in Hilton, Salt Lake City, Western U.S. Karate Championships. That's my last tournament. That was Chuck Norris's first tournament. And that's all I got. But anyway, I got a second. And I remember showing him the trophy, and he looked at it and he goes, "You know why you got that? Because nobody there could fight." And I thought, well, that was really like, geez, says, and they don't make contact. It's a game of tag. And I said, well, if it's a game of tag, then why do I have a Charlie horse shirt, a Charlie horse shirt, and a rib cage shirt? And but I just thought that was so funny. He looked at the trophy and says, "That's nothing."
Was that
Bruce did? Yeah, he told me that was nothing. That's nothing. He says, "That's just a game of tag. There's no real contact." That's why I thought it was so funny, because I was sitting there with a Charlie horse in both legs, and my ribs really hurt. And he was telling me that was a game of tag. He says, "You guys don't hit to the face."
I hear this question a lot: who would win in a fight? I don't know if it's a silly question. Bruce Lee versus heavyweight champion of the past, undefeated, 49-0, Rocky Marciano, a very strong puncher who had tremendous endurance. He didn't stop. Though he was 5 feet 11 inches tall, 185, but he hit like a 2,000-pounder impact. Bruce Lee versus Marciano, I have to go along with Bruce Lee. Probably in the streets, in the ring, possibility Bruce Lee would take him. Bruce Lee was just too fast. And they had to slow down the footage in the Enter the Dragon. And Bruce Lee, of course, would have beaten Rocky Marciano. Though I favor Marciano as one of the greatest heavyweights that ever lived, but not the greatest in my book. So Bruce Lee, I think, would once again prevail over Marciano. Bruce Lee would prevail by speed. He had fantastic footwork, amazing reflexes. Just he could rattle off those punches so fast, maybe shoot 3 or 4 punches in a second. Of course, he could be more deadly than Rocky Marciano, you know, and probably in much better shape. I had to go along with Bruce Lee.